At this time, I'd like to introduce Paul Esch, who will give his transition story, his career transition story. I've known Paul for a number of years now. Paul's been successful at going through transition and finding a career that he finds very to his liking, and he's doing very well. So Paul, would you come up and do your career transition story?
All right, thank you very much, Tom. I'm so excited to be with you. I got here last week and I was ready to give a talk a week ago. So a week early. So the purpose of my message is to give you a little encouragement and to be open to the journey that God is taking you on. To, at this time, as you're in your job search, to stop and look, make some decisions, and then take action. So I came across a line in 2012, and when I was preparing for this, I got a chance to reflect on the job searches that I've been in, and I realized, I didn't even realize, I have now done 4 job searches in the last 10 years, and they keep getting closer together. Rebecca was saying, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I came across this passage. Dear God, show me the purpose of my life, and I will be your humble servant forever. And I had to be on my knees to receive that message. I mean, humbled is what I meant. And if you want to know where I'm coming from, I had a client, I had a business for 18 years, and I had a lot of ups and downs, some major successes with that business. I really saw myself as a sales and marketing person, a consultant, and a speaker and trainer. And I spoke and educated thousands of people. I developed a program that got rolled out to 300 franchisees nationally. That, if you ask me what's the biggest accomplishment of my career, maybe that was it, because that resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional business with this client that I kept working with. But I developed a niche in the automotive industry, and I had a client, he's passed away now, but he was suffering from cancer, and he said to me, Paul, life is humbling. And if you want to know where I'm coming from, what I said to him was, as it's meant to be. That life really, we're going to be in a better place and more disposed to having friendship with God if we're a little humble. So James 4:10, humble yourself before the Lord and he will lift you up. And a job loss can be really, really humbling. But it can be how God works with us to develop a friendship with him on the journey to discovering the mystery of who he is and who I am. And I was super confused about who I am in this job search process. I was a lot like St. Paul, the apostle, charging off to Damascus in all his ego, ready to kill Christians. And he was blinded, struck down and blinded. And that's exactly where I was. I didn't even know what hit me. But I found out, hey, now I know why people in their 50s and 60s take these seemingly meaningless jobs, is because they got discarded by corporate. And that's exactly how I felt, that I had been discarded. And it was too bad. But if we thought we were the captains of our lives, instead, what we must do is humbly asking God, what do you want me to do? And put him at the center of the, instead of thinking of yourself as the captain of your life. So early in the job search, the same month that I lost my job with Barnes & Noble, after my business kind of failed in the, after the 2008-09 decline, I went back to my staffing roots. I worked in the staffing industry, and then I took a job with Barnes & Noble. I thought I had found the perfect fit for me. And I injured my neck, and they thanked me. I didn't file a work comp claim. They thanked me by firing. So, but early in that search, I found this passage from Isaiah. I will lead the blind, God says, by ways they have not known. Along unfamiliar paths, I will guide them. I will turn the darkness into light before them and make the rough places smooth. These are the things I will do. I will not forsake them. Well, I really held on to this passage, and I started going to daily mass at Transfiguration. And I'm happy that my instincts were to go to God in this really difficult time. And in spite of this distress of losing the job, I was very concerned about the pressure it was going to put on my marriage. We've been married now happily for 22, 23 years. But in fact, the job search actually brought us closer together and helped us build trust. Totally unexpected. I thought that, it was going to be bad for us, but that was not really what happened. And just to show you how confused and disoriented I was, I couldn't even, and I like words, I couldn't even come up with the words to describe where I was until I heard Fancy Ray give a talk, and he used the word stuck and getting unstuck. And I'm like, that's what I am, I'm stuck. And that was like almost like comfort to realize at least I knew where I was. And then I started collecting and grouping YouTube channels on different topics around this theme of stuck. And I was struggling to find the words. What am I? Am I coping with loss? Am I in grief? Am I angry? Am I dealing with how do I deal with the rejection? All these interviews that you go on and just nothing pans out. Maybe it's an inner conflict. I remember my dad said, one of the reasons people don't achieve their goals is because they're conflicted. I'm like, well, what's the conflict I got within me? I don't know. I was in the process of healing in this job search, but asking myself, am I depressed? Do I have PSTD? I mean, trauma. Have you ever heard of Brene Brown? She talked about shame. I had all this crap that I was swimming around in. I had met Tom, I think it was in the fall of 2019, maybe, before I joined the Crossroads group. And 𝙿𝙖 came in and gave a talk about 6 different career paths that you could take. One of them being self-employed, another freelancing, another would be, a corporate job or a small business. And I was livid after I heard him talk, and Tom knows I'm not lying. I was so mad because I really wanted to be self-employed again, and that option just didn't seem to be available to me anymore. We just didn't have the capital to do it again. So I'm going through all this, and then I heard about the Crossroads group. Maybe Tom, I don't know, maybe personally invited me to join. So I was participating in January to February of 2020. And I was working super hard at the job search. I really thought of it like a sales campaign. If you're a salesperson, the job search isn't as hard as maybe somebody, the joke about the introvert who's looks at the tips of the shoes, to be when he's expressing himself. I looked at the job search like a sales campaign, and I remember my dad said, he was a national motivational speaker. If you want to increase your sales results, you've got to increase your activity level and ask better questions. Now that you can take to the bank, that is wisdom right there. So, and I lined up an opportunity with me. I decided, you know what, maybe I'm not going to stay in sales and marketing. I'll change careers because I could not find a decent job offer. I met a lot of great people. I got a lot of great pens. I picked up all kinds of great pens. I decided also, I told God, I said, you know what, if I get asked to volunteer, I'm going to say yes to every single thing that I get asked to volunteer for. I participated in the Archdiocese Synod. I got that pen. I even substitute taught over in Minneapolis. I practically got in a fist fight with a beefy 7th grader. And then taught 1st graders And I had an epiphany when the first grader said, Mr. Esch, you didn't spell scissors right. I was like, well, I'm not going into teaching. What else? I found a staffing company. I got to tell you about this one right here, because this is really cool. Look at this one. It's got a flashlight. This guy right here offered me a job, 100% commission. No, thank you. And that's what I kept coming up with. So I was like, I got to find another avenue. And York Solutions came across my computer, and I was interviewing, third interview with them to get into the IT staffing world. And the pandemic hit, and they said, all bets are off, everything's closed, forget it. That was March. We had just finished the 8-week Crossroads group, and I wanted to say something about the Crossroads group. The group was very unique. I had been participating with the White Box Club, with the Wooddale Job Transition Group. I was doing the 6 steps. I was doing my star stories, the how do you answer the question, why did you leave Barnes & Noble, all that stuff. And of course, the Crossroads is very practical in helping you with the job search. But there was a few moments of truth. One of them I already told you about, 𝙤𝙤𝙤𝙤 coming in here, me just having a visceral reaction to that. And then, of course, after Tom was so kind to listen to me, I had to go back home and say, why did I have such a reaction? There was another exercise that we did. Sometimes in an interview, you're asked, well, tell me your strengths and weaknesses. And this was a blind spot for me that I didn't realize. And in the comfort of a supportive spiritual group, I was free to really take a look at what are my real strengths and what are my real weaknesses. And why was that a blind spot for me in the interview process? Because if you would ask me that, what's your weakness? What I would spiral into was shame and think about my personal character weaknesses. And in this exercise, I came up with 61 strengths and 61 weaknesses based on thinking about conflicts that I had had with people over the years, going way back to my 7th grade teacher. And I was really curious. I was kind of like open to this. Like, why, what was the source of the conflict? What was the situation? What was my role? Why did I do this? And what were the weaknesses that were emerging? To just take a truthful inventory of that. So today, if you ask me, what are your weaknesses? I would say, well, I wish I was a little taller, or no, I'm just kidding. I might say something that was skills-based, like, because that's totally different than personal traits. I'm not that ashamed that I could be better at Excel or CRM systems or other things like that. Technology, that's a good area to talk about weaknesses. Anyhow, that was very freeing. I want to share just a couple other thoughts with you that came out of participating with the Crossroads group. Somewhere along the line, I met a software engineer who posted on LinkedIn all his activities for his job search. He had been in the search for 6 months. He had listed the number of networking meetings he had done, applications he'd filled out, interviews, offers, very metric oriented, which if you were a salesperson, this would appeal to you because it's stuff you can control, is the activity. So I want to tell you, Fred worked super hard at the job, but I worked about 20% harder. And I just was not coming up with anything. So when the pandemic hit, it was an easy decision to make for me. I had run out of unemployment, and I said, well, who is selling essential services? I applied at Hy-Vee of all places to be a shopper. And this is super humbling to do this. But what I took a job with was driving for Amazon. Driving for Amazon. And believe it or not, I enjoyed the job. I liked it a lot more than I thought. It was the healthiest job I ever had. I was getting fresh air, vitamin D. No one was on the road. It was the pandemic, so I had no fear of getting in an accident. And the front yards of some of these people in the Twin Cities, gorgeous flowers and tulips, and honestly, every day was getting better. And I drove for, it wasn't directly for Amazon. Amazon uses third-party contractors. So I was working for Urban Logistics, and it's a small company. Okay? They got about 60 to 90 drivers. And after 4 months, they recognized that I would be a good fit for HR. So I am the HR manager for Urban Logistics right now, and have been for over a year and a half. So I'm shocked to say that I am logistics, because I thought of myself as sales and marketing. So let me just conclude with this. Who am I? Because that's kind of where I was starting a little bit. I have no idea. I am a total mystery myself. I'm like my son, Nick. If you ask him when he was little, what was his favorite color? He said, multi. And that is how I see myself, which has been a mystery. However, my name is 𝙿𝙖𝙫𝙬𝙕, and at least I'm sure that I am a son, a brother, a husband, a dad, and a child of a loving God. I just have one thing. I don't expect you guys to drive for Amazon, but you might have a kid or know somebody that would like to drive for Amazon. So if you do, will you please refer them to me? Because I'm looking for drivers. All right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. That was enlightening, and I never had my name said so much in one of these discussions, but I appreciate that I was able to impact you in some way. So thank you, Paul. That was a great story. At this time, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce David 𝙤𝙤𝙫𝙤, and David is in the staffing industry and has been owned his own company for a very long time, and I'm sure he's he's got a lot of great ideas. I've heard him speak many times, and we're going to get great wisdom out of this talk for sure. At this time, I'm just going to bring David up and have him start his discussion. Thank you for being here tonight, David.
It's really a pleasure. Thank you, Paul. Great job. Thank you. I'm actually going to start right when you do the first impression. I'm going to start and make sure that the technology is supporting my needs here. Life. There's more life. Oh, okay. And it says something really odd on my screen, but as long as it's good here, we're good. Thank you for being here, both live and live streamed. I appreciate it. Harry, thank you for inviting me here. Tom, fun to be here. Thank you. By way of introduction, my whole background is in, broadly defined, we didn't call it talent acquisition, we called it staffing. It's been matching people and jobs. I spent the first part of my career in corporate life, Agribank, Honeywell, and the Pillsbury Company. By the way, the legal name is the Pillsbury Company. Pillsbury was a very fattening place to work. They owned Haagen-Dazs at the time. And the average weight gain of a Haagen-Dazs employee in the first 6 months of employment was 20 pounds. Where most organizations have coffee or water, they had scoop your own. Innocent looking 1 scoop cups, about 500 calories every time you touch that scoop. If you ate it, it was about 1,000. Anyway. Left corporate life, went into the career transition field, and actually worked with people who were laid off or terminated on helping them get reemployed. Did that for about 7 years, sold that company, and opened up an executive search firm. I work with organizations right now, mostly small to medium, mostly privately held companies, finding their directors, VPs, and other people in the C-suite. So really all I've done is match people and jobs. When I was in 10th grade English, I thought I was just great as could be in terms of one talent, because for years I had been doing this in classes and had never gotten caught. I could do bird calls. First day, 10th grade English, I got caught. And the instructor looked at me. This was long before Head and Shoulders. I had hair at the time. The instructor looked at me and said, "David, you never get a second chance to make the first impression." And I will remember that forever. I fought my way to a B in that class. And I think that was generous of her, because I was a bit of a jerk starting that first day. That was the first impression I made. In the job search, how close can I get this thing? Well, that's better. In the job search, we have multiple opportunities to make first impressions. So it isn't just once. We have the elevator speech. We have the physical and voice aspects of our life. We have what I will call written communications, your resume, LinkedIn page, we get to emails, and we have social media. And each of those are an opportunity for us to make an impression. And you have to make sure that each impression counts. And that's really what we're going to talk about. Now, I can do a monologue the entire time I'm up here. Trust me, you do not want me to do a monologue. So if you have questions, raise your hand, yell them out. Don't throw things at me because I can throw back. But beyond that, ask the question. I don't know if anybody's monitoring live stream. If there are questions, Harry, you are doing that?
Yeah, but yes.
Cool. All right. I like it. Yell those questions. I appreciate it. Now, of course, I found the oldest possible cartoon I could find. I got an elevator pitch, an escalator pitch, and just to be safe, a stairway pitch. I will guarantee you we will be in crowded elevators again at some point. The fact that we are live tonight is really pretty cool. I have a mask with me, 2 more in the car, about 400 home, plus in my office, but we are here live today. So we will be in groups today where you have to start with a tell me about yourself. First impression. I have to tell you that your first word should not be That may sound strange. Ask a Toastmaster. I'm an counter in some of those meetings. And let me tell you, when I ask you to tell me about yourself, you should know your own background. You never start with the word People that hear that word will only hear that word for your 30-second elevator pitch. More on elevator pitches and speaking later. However, I want to refer you to an old book that's been rewritten multiple times called How to Work a Room. We are out with people all the time. For 22 years, my wife was in a career where I was the only male spouse or male in the room of 70 people that didn't do one thing. My wife is a retired firefighter. She ran into burning buildings for me. I was the only male that would go to events where I was the only person that did not run into burning buildings for me. I chose to run out. It seemed like a good thing. Regardless, she's my hero and I'm more than happy to support her doing it. Whenever we would go to a fire event, I had to think about some of these items. Adopting a positive attitude. What benefits would I get out of this? Who would I meet? Who would I talk to? What would we interact on? I would plan a self-introduction They didn't care necessarily what I did for a living. They were more interested in some of the things I did in my spare time. My introduction was very, very different. I pre-thought small talk. Now, how many people here have ever Googled news of the weird? It has been renamed to Shepherd Express if you've done it recently. Best place in the world to get small talk ideas. I would say look at the paper, but you're going to get politics, you get COVID, not from reading the paper. You're just going to read about COVID. I don't think you get COVID from that. You're going to get weather stuff. No one wants to talk about the weather. It's hot, it's cold, it's sunny, it's wet, it's not food. I want you to Google news of the weird and come up with some really fun topics to talk about at an event. They're way more interesting than anything you will find at any. You have to practice eye contact. Now we're going to talk about Zoom in a little while. Eye contact in this room is making sure that I have face contact with every person there. Eye contact is a sign of intimacy in our society, so you don't want to lock eyes with people. It makes them uncomfortable, makes them a little crazy. But if we do face contact, it is the same thing. And just a little hint, eye contact on your Zoom screen is talking to the camera lens, not talking to the screen. A very important nuance, which we'll get into in a little while. By the way, especially on Zoom, smile the entire time. Because you are visible the entire time. You will be exhausted from smiling the entire time. But smile the entire time. Staying with this book, there were 3 lessons within this book that were all put in negative terms, if you will. So I want you to think about these don'ts. Don't talk to strangers. The best thing you can do at a networking event is talk to strangers. If you are, how many people have walked into a room, networking event, professional association, and not known anybody? How many love that? Okay, believe it or not, I do. I look for the person that is least comfortable. They walk in, they look around, they scowl. I want them. Why? I go up to them and say, hi, I don't know anybody, who are you? They're startled, they give me their name, usually without a they give me their name, and we become friends because we were both uncomfortable. The 2 of us are now laughing, the 2 of us are having a good time. We wait for a 3rd unsuspecting person. They walk in, they scowl. We attack. Hi, we don't know anybody, we just met, we've been friends for seconds, who are you? We form our own group. We form a table. We have fun. Talk to strangers, they're way more fun. Don't wait to be properly introduced. We're going to talk later on about the importance of being a host or hostess. Hosts and hostesses make people comfortable. That is their job. Guests wait to be introduced. Do not wait to be properly introduced. Go up and start forming friendships. Staying on that theme, good things come to those who wait. You have to tell people what you're looking for at some point. You have to tell people, if the appropriate time and event exists, I'm in transition. Here's what I'm looking for. If the proper time doesn't exist, but you think there's someone you should be following up with, follow up. There is nothing more important than the follow-up. All of these are critically important. Practice them from a first impression standpoint. Keep on thinking this is going to do something. I think it's more of a paperwork thing. So, we talked a little bit about small talk. I want to take conversation down a little bit further, a little more detail. By the way, the best conversationalists are the ones who speak the least. They listen well. That's number 6 on this list. I want you all each morning to read a newspaper. Do not worry about getting your hands full of newsprint. They're all online. Find out what's going on. I can tell you every morning I have a routine. I'm one of those crazy morning people. I'm in the office by 5:20 to 5:30 every morning. And I read Star Tribune, Fox, and CNN. And the reason I read both Fox and CNN is I figure if I read the two and average them, I will get the truth. By the way, they never have the same head. Sort of an interesting experiment. You should try. Read a newspaper a day and sometimes read from the bottom. Some of the most interesting stories from a small talk standpoint are on the bottom, but nonetheless know what's going on. If you've got an interview coming up, informational conversation, you're pursuing an industry, you're pursuing a company, and you see something related to one of their competitors, copy, paste, clip, and collect is the old word. You will use it later. Start keeping files on your desktop relating to different topics. How many people here are involved in at least one professional or industry association? If your hand isn't up, it should be. Spend time on those newsletters. Find out what's happening. Look at blog posts. Find out what's happening in your industry, in your profession. Take note and take notes. All of us carry a computer with us. We disguise it as a phone. Has a notepad. Someone says something interesting. You have to follow up on something. You read something that you need to reference later. Put it in there. Important to do. Humor. Never tell a joke without field testing it first. We are at a point now where people are offended by whatever you're likely to say. Field test it. I know that my wife is an amazing judge in that regard. If she rolls her eyes, I know I have a hit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, listening. There are all sorts of studies that talk about the impression we make, even if we know people. So I know a few people in this room. And even though they know me and I know them, we are again doing initial impressions. And the first 2 to 5 minutes of anybody's presence, we are judged more physically than we are by anything else. We're judged by our appearance. 60% appearance, 33% voice, and 7% content. By the way, content never gets beyond 50%. We're still judged by our physical appearance as well as our voice. We'll talk about the voice in a moment. Why do I have Zoom on here? Because it is here to stay. We have learned some really interesting lessons during the pandemic. Not all of them have been horrible lessons. We've learned that we can work from anywhere. There's some interesting words that have come from that as a result. Workations is a common word, where you work while you are on vacation. Leisure trips, business and leisure coming together. Anybody know what a ZERT is? We'll come back to that one. We have learned we can work from home. We have learned we can work from our car. We've learned we can work from our cabin. I did an interview earlier today, for a role that we're filling. And the person, she was at her cabin. Beautiful background, spectacular. Why she gave me her time while she was at her cabin, that's up to her. It was spectacular. She didn't even, she had Wi-Fi, it was good. We were on a screen. The technology is still in its infancy. And that is a problem. Whether you're on Zoom, Google Meets, Teams, Microsoft, who knows, it's all in its infancy and you need to realize that. Now, that said, there are things you need to know. One, you are always visible. Even if you think you're invisible, you have made a decision about how you want your visibility to be viewed. You've chosen to be off screen. Are you paying attention? Are you getting coffee? Are you working out? Are you not even in the house or in the room? You're making a decision. You're always visible. This person is wearing a 𝙬𝙤. A 𝙬𝙤 is a Zoom shirt or blouse. We are visible on screen from here up. So I can tell you for the better part of a year, I kept a sport coat in my office. If I was doing something on screen, I'd wear a business-related shirt, throw the sport coat on, and I was in jeans. By the way, it's actually trendy, but neither here nor there. And that is you're wearing a 𝙬𝙤. What's really fun, if you follow retail trends, during the first year of the pandemic, retailers were selling out of shirts and blouses. They've got an inventory of slacks like know what's in your background. You're always visible. What is behind you? And you need to make sure it looks professional. If you are at home and you've taken over whatever nook or cranny you have available, you need to understand what is behind you in that nook or cranny and who travels behind you. I was doing a Zoom happy hour with a client sometime late last summer. And her husband walked by in his underwear. I thought it was one of the funnier things I'd seen, but she did not find the same humor in it. I can't even imagine what that conversation. Background noises. Every Monday evening, I actually lead a service through my synagogue. And normally I would be going to the synagogue to do this. We did just return live for the Jewish New Year. It was nice to see people. Regardless, the service I've been doing for the last year plus has been from my kitchen. My wife and I have certain rules while I am leading this half-hour service every Monday. No one goes to the bathroom. Toilet flushing is a really distinctive thing. Cooking. Microwaves make some interesting noises, especially if they're really new. Dishwasher cycles. Our dishwasher has the most annoying set of beeps when it's done. Oh my God. Know what noise you are making. Camera. Eye contact is the lens of the camera. It is not the screen. It is not the person you're talking to if you've got a big screen in front of you. It is the camera lens. Speak to it. Get used to that. You are always visible. So even if you are not talking, you are going to have resting crabby face. Keep that in mind. That's why you're smiling all the time. You want to make sure because people are seeing you. They may not be focused on you, but they are seeing you. So you have to smile, you have to move, you have to show you're animated. If you really want to make sure you show up well, stand. However, you need to build a platform under your laptop or computer, whatever you've got. Most people, when they're sitting in a chair and have their laptop on the table, the camera angle is such that it is looking up your nose and is showing you whatever light fixture you have. It's really not that attractive. The nose or the light fixtures do. So you want to build a platform. Think like an engineer. You want to build a platform under your computer. We at our house have what we call Zoom Tupperware. We know exactly which Tupperware fits under the laptop if we're doing happy hour with friends or whatever, to get it right to where we want it. When I am standing doing this service, thankfully no one can see. I have a chair on the table because the backdrop is a formal dining. So the kitchen table, there is a chair. There are 4 cookbooks, the same 4 cookbooks. If my wife puts them in a different order, we have rules. 4 cookbooks that go on top of the chair. Then the laptop. Perfect. Practice. Think about this. Think like an engineer. Incredibly important. Yes.
Is it important, you're talking about all smiling, is it more important to do that or react to the other street?
The answer to that is yes. Great question. That is a phenomenal question. The answer is yes. Do what you do if you're in a live audience. You're looking around a little bit. You're smiling, you're laughing, you're frowning, whatever you're doing. But you're always doing it in front of people. Normally, people are looking away, they're going to get a cup of coffee, they're doing something. You are always going to be there, so just remember this. But you're going to do all of those things. Great point. I have never watched this show. I'm assuming the premise is someone singing, and we're judging them by voice alone. The same studies that talk about 60% appearance talk about how we show up on the phone. 70% of how we're judged is the sound of our voice. 30% is content. Phone. Just with phone. I cannot be as expressive if I have one hand on the phone. I want to be hands-free. Invest in a good headset or a good speaker and audio system, something, whatever it takes, so that you do not need to be holding a tether while you are talking to people. You cannot be as expressive if your hands are tied up. Written impressions. There are volumes and volumes. I'm sure there's some on the cart. There are volumes and volumes and volumes of information on resume writing. I am not here to tell you how to write a resume. What I can tell you is that I have been timed in studies, usually through some academic institution. How long does a person read a resume? And the typical resume read first time through is like 10 seconds. It's not long. Your resume is 2-3 pages. Do the math. We're not spending a lot of time. What gets a resume read? The answer is simple. It isn't fancy graphics. It's not columns and using different lines and fonts. It's ease of finding information. When someone is looking at your resume, yes, you want it to have visual interest. You don't want to be using the old 𝙿𝙤𝙫𝙀 typeface from my 1903 print rate typewriter. You want it to be of sorts visually interesting. That said, finding things is important. If I have to look for your phone number and you've hidden it in the footing section because that'll make you think I'm going to look at your entire resume, I am now annoyed in that 10 seconds. Not a good impression. I want to find things quickly. Most recruiters prefer a chronological format. Chronological simply means oldest last. It's written in reverse, newest on top. The assumption is you want the next position over the current or most recent. Pretty simple. Functional resumes, a little bit of history. Does anybody know why a functional resume was created in the first place?
Career transitions?
That is why it's used. But it actually was created for a different reason. It's a great answer.
Hide dates.
Pardon?
Hide the dates.
Hide the dates is one of the functions of a functional resume, one of the purposes, I should say. How many people here have ever watched Leave It to Beaver? Let's create an alternative ending to the entire story. You have Ward, June, she has a couple of kids, Wally and Theodore. Yeah, that's about it. The alternative ending. Wally cheats on June. They get divorced. June has not worked since she got married or became pregnant. So she either got her MRS degree, is what it was called back in the day. She was at college for a minute, met Ward, got married, dropped out of college. Or she worked until she became pregnant. That was the story. She's now needing to work. She's done all sorts of things. She was the president of the church something and the treasurer of the PTA, and she led this volunteer activity, and she got the books for Ward's company. This woman has talents. She got a couple of years worth of college credits. She worked for some period of time. But the dates go back a long way. Functional resume was created to help women react to jobs. It takes all the experiences that you have and makes you organize them by function. Communication, management, finances, whatever it happens to be, you organize it by sort of skill set. Removes dates completely. I've not met a recruiter, a staffing person, internal or external, that likes them. Combination takes those functions, add the timeline, so it shows you were in prison for the last 5 to 30, and puts them together. Given the choice, go chronological. Keyword, still sometimes referred to as electronic. Resumes that are read by a scanner and looked at later. So if you apply to a large company at 3M, United Health, General Mills, Medtronic kind of place, it's going to go into a very, very fancy and tracking system, and your resume is going to be pulled up later by keyword. Keywords, by the way, are nouns. They are not action verbs. Most of your resumes are written with action verbs that start each sentence. That doesn't mean you should change it, but it's administered, developed, managed, created. Those are lovely words. They aren't the ones that are being screened. Nouns are what companies look for when they're looking at words in a tracking system. So if you want to know how your resume gets pulled up, find the job description for the job you're applying for. Highlight on screen, or literally, the nouns that are in the description. Then take your resume. Highlight the nouns that are in your resume. The higher the match, the more likely you are to be pulled. Pretty simple. Memorable formats. I want to find stuff. I want an experience section that says experience. I want an education that says, a section that says education. I want it laid out logically. If you've been out of college for more than a couple of years, education drops, experience goes up. Pretty simple rule. Proofreading. I stink at proofreading. If I can find an error, I don't know how to spell scissor. I was thinking. I'm sure it's got a few S's in it, but I would hope for spell check, or my grandson, who's just started kindergarten 2 days ago, to probably tell. Okay. If I can find an error, by the way, my favorite was someone who was a quality assurance engineer, and quality was spelled wrong. Have someone else proofread. Please, you can't see your own. Sections. Not every resume needs an objective, and if you have one, it better be worth putting in. An objective that says seeking professional opportunity tells me nothing. So do something with meaning. Qualification summary. 4 to 7 badly, grammatically poor bullet points that summarize you. See that summary is report. easy to read, can be done in less than 10 seconds. Sometimes not a bad way to go. If you're trying to highlight some of the experience you had from long ago, you can have a relevant experience and other experience. Nothing wrong with having experience sections. Education sections. I got my undergraduate degree in 1979. That was 42 years ago. That's really hard to say. 42 years ago. Thankfully, I have continued my education. So yes, I can say I have a bachelor's degree. But if I stop there, continuing education or professional development is something that is important to all of my clients who are looking for things. If you want to know how your resume plays, there are a couple of websites I threw out there. Load your resume in and see what you think, or see what it is. Annie Fisher is a columnist and a blogger, and she talks about what's wrong with your resume. Probably one of the most important items is middle of this first list, burying or not including important information. If you are multilingual or bilingual, let people know that. That's very unusual in the US. If you have a security clearance, in theory, you're not supposed to tell people that. Put it on your resume. It's an important thing for people to know. Personal information. We still get resumes with birth dates, height, weight, my favorite, marital status, 3 times. Seriously, on the resume. People are wonderful in what they share. They shouldn't. Please, no personal information. Okay. LinkedIn every year comes up with a list of overused words on resumes. There is nothing wrong with any of the words on LinkedIn's list. Not at all. However, can you back them up? Innovative, but you spent 30 years in city government. I just hit a couple of stereotypes. That's not fair of me. Nonetheless, innovative and city government are not typically things that come together. I've spent my entire life at Cargill, and I lead with entrepreneurial. Cargill is bigger than most countries. It's a marvelous organization. It's incredible in terms of the diversity of what it does. The results are phenomenal, but they are not known for being entrepreneurial. Results oriented. I always have to hit this one. Most resumes are written as lists of responsibilities. That's a problem. I don't care what you're responsible for. My clients don't care what you're responsible for. They want to know what you achieved. Results. So if your resume says you're results oriented and not one of them is listed, you have an impression issue on your resume. Every day for Tuesday and Wednesday, the Jewish New Year, I did not turn on technology. It's really sort of fun. It's more of a test, could I do? 160 emails a day is what I get on average. It doesn't matter if I'm on vacation, it doesn't matter if it's Christmas, it doesn't matter if it's Rosh Hashanah, it doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday. I get 160 emails, just I would lie to you if I said I would. Wish I could. However, you want to be noticed, so you need to make an impression. So let's talk a little bit about it. My email address is david@𝘿𝙖𝙫𝙤.com. It's the start of the company name, but an email address that went 𝘿𝙖𝙫_.com seemed like forever to type. So we just did 𝘿𝙖𝙫. That's actually the way we started 25 years ago. 𝘿𝙖𝙫. But it's David at. When I get an email that says to whom it may concern, that's a little concerning because I'm the whom. David@𝙬𝙤𝙫𝙤. If it got to my desk, it had to say David. Subject line. Because I get so many emails, I do not use a preview pane. Whatever I get, just a long list. So I look at the subject lines, I look at email addresses that I might know. Think of your email address, or the subject line, excuse me, think of the subject line as prime real estate. What you want someone to see in 3 to 8 words. If you are sending me your resume, the word resume is not going to do well for you. If you are wanting to introduce yourself, introduction does nothing for you. What's interesting is my computer automatically puts those in trash. I just trained it to do so. If you were attending tonight's event, live streaming or live, thank you guys for being live, by the way. It's just fun to see people. Subject line, attended workshop at Woodford. Wow. Referred by one of the esteemed gentlemen. Put their name. It's wonderful, it's easy. For 64 years, I have been David. Your email starts with Dear Dave. And then it goes on to say, I was referred to you by. That's a lie. So never start that one. My personal favorite, Dear Mary, to David and 𝙬𝙤𝙫𝙤. Don't even ask. This should be an easy 8 hands up. How many people have a LinkedIn page? Okay, 9 hands. How many people have a Facebook page? How many people tweet? How many people actually think that if they send a LinkedIn message, put something out on Facebook as a private message, or tweet in a designated manner, that only one person actually sees it? Facebook is fascinating to me. And yes, I have a Facebook page. I put up a thought for Friday every Friday. It is not spiritual. It is not serious. It is usually some tinge of sarcasm. This past Friday's was, if you are riding a horse being chased by a dirt giraffe and there's a lion next to you, get your drunk butt off the carousel. That was my thought for Friday. Social anthropologists have studied the fact that we are capable of having close relationships with somewhere between 150 and 250 people. We know way more. But keeping track of family status, kids, grandkids, what's going on, who's been diagnosed with this, who just had a baby, and all sorts of things. 150 to 250. And when Facebook came out, I remember I had one friend who said, I want to get 1,000 friends on Facebook. And my response was, I don't ever want to. There are just not that many people I want to watch. Sounds horrible to say that, but it's very true. You need to assume that anything you do on social media is going to be seen by the entire public. The problem with social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc., is not my settings. It's not your settings. It's the settings of the people that see your stuff and share it or comment on it. Those are visible. Unless you change your settings about daily. You need to assume that you are having a dialogue in front of hundreds, if not thousands. Now, if you think I'm wrong, we can go back to Congressman Anthony Weiner. We can go back to the Harvard entry class from 3 years ago. Group of freshmen that were part of a private Facebook group. And to be part of this elite group, they had to post something derogatory, usually sexually derogatory. Harvard found out. Harvard kicked their freshman butts off campus before they started. Can you imagine parents coming home? Hey, guess what happened today? You know, I worked my entire life to make it to Harvard. Turned all those other colleges down. I'm not going. I want you all, at some point before September ends, to Google yourself. Now, you need to Google yourself from a computer that doesn't know you. So don't Google yourself from your own laptop, because your search algorithms and previous search history will impact what comes up on the screen. Borrow a friend's computer, even if you're connected with them on LinkedIn or Facebook, unless they've been Googling you daily, you're probably fine. Google yourself from their computer and look at the first 3 to 4 pages of results. You will find out about your social media presence more quickly than you realize. You will also find out what every employer will find out about you. Eric.
David, just a quick story on that, because not only to find out about yourself, but who else is out there with your name. And in one of my Crossroads classes, actually, probably about 12 years ago now, but had somebody that had a very unique ethnic name. But if you Googled him, you know, there was on maybe the 3rd or 4th page, there were a couple things about him. But the other person with his name was a producer of porn films in Los Angeles. And it was just littered with that. You know, he never knew until we talked about Googling yourself. So be aware at least what else is out there.
That is just concerning.
Yeah.
Wow. I can tell you there was a Dr. 𝘿𝙖𝙫𝙫 dentist in California who passed away a few years ago. That was the other one you got.
Yeah.
I also, now, please don't judge. I Google my kids once a month and their spouses once a month. I have 3 kids and they're all Google my wife. Just usually I'm doing it in front of her because I Google me from her computer and her from my computer, and
Actually, if you go into incognito mode,
Yeah,
on your own
you can do
computer,
that
also.
the key is find out what's going on social media wise about you. Even though employers in theory don't do this, they all do this. They all do social media wise to see what's going on. We have covered in reasonably record time a fair amount in terms of different ways we make impressions. We have 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Questions? I will answer anything. I don't do vertical.
On your slide, when you talked about Zoom, you had a bullet in there about don't use virtual backgrounds.
Oh, thank you.
touched on-
I did not touch on that. I apologize. The weakest part of Zoom is actually the virtual backgrounds. So if you've ever experienced someone who has done the beach thing or whatever, and they move, you lose body parts, ears, part of the face, whatever they're wearing below the neck. And goodness knows if they're expressive and talk with their hands, you will get various combinations of fingers that you probably don't want. It's just a weak part of the technology. When Zoom started, the numbers initially, I mean, think back to pre-March 2020. Zoom had roughly 3 million hours of meetings a week, I think, at that time. They immediately went up to 300 million. The biggest issue Zoom started to have, and I'm picking on Zoom, but I'm sure it was the same with Google Meets and Teams, who knows what, is people Zoom bombing. I can tell you that our synagogue got Zoom bombed, and not in a good way. So Zoom started working on security, making sure that there were passwords, we had to admit people, so on and so forth. So you just didn't get into a meeting by happenstance. They didn't spend any time, from what I can tell, perfecting virtual backgrounds. They were horrible then, and they are horrible then. And you can buy backdrops that are better. Gotta tell you, just know what's behind you. Keeping in mind that you really do need to know what's behind you. These people have the darndest things behind them. And usually, again, because of the way the world has evolved during this pandemic, we're in a guest bedroom, we're in front of a closet, we're in a hallway, we're in a kitchen, wherever we can find space in our home, because we've got 2 or 3 kids doing school and we've got at least 2 adults trying to work. You just take whatever space you can, know what's behind you, but don't do virtual. Thank you for the question. Sorry I missed that. Other questions?
I think the big thing too is about the lighting that people use. People sit in front of the window and all you see is some silhouette, or it's the typical, it's almost like a studio. You gotta think if you're doing a production, make sure that you're getting
Exactly. So I actually have a lamp, a 25-watt bulb on top of my roll top desk in my office. It's the perfect front lighting. I have to put the blinds down in my office. And depending on time of day and what's going on, hallway lights are off as well. Hallway lights are off as well for that exact reason. Tom, that's a great comment. Thank you. Very important. Truly, you do need to think like you're an engineer in multiple different ways to get Zoom to be what you want it to be from an impression standpoint. And again, wear gym shorts, flip-flops, no one cares until you stand. Zert. Because that's all they say. That's all they should say.
The physical first impression and how you're dressed is so critically important. And I just had this conversation with a client last week, because they're a company that everybody's wearing jeans and t-shirts all day long, but they got offended when somebody showed up on Zoom for an interview in a polo shirt, and they thought it was inappropriate to dress down for that interview. And so, you know, even if they are casual themselves, don't assume that they would prefer that in an interview with you.
When I do Zoom interviews with candidates, we establish dress code as part of it. Okay, we're going to do Zoom tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Dress code is casual. I will put that in writing. I really don't want to be reading your t-shirt, so go polo. Is typically what we say, but establish it, and it is important. It's part of the impression that we make. I wouldn't have worn a t-shirt tonight.
What if you try and upgrade that? You get the notice or whatnot, it's a casual exchange or whatnot, you come in a suit and tie, is that a problem for anybody?
You know, it's not a problem for me, although I will make a comment if I'm interviewing you, and I will put in writing my Zoom invitation, dress code casual, so you realize that I was not just saying it. I will comment, aha, this is your definition of casual, so I'm assuming formal is a tux. And that's the way it will begin. Now, if you're interviewing with a client, so you get through me and you're moving on to the client interview, and by the way, I don't care if you're wearing gym shorts and flip-flops, just don't stand. Although all of my clients are doing face-to-face interviews, which is interesting. Other questions, comments?
Video interviews from home, what are your thoughts on pets, cats and dogs?
Oh, just pre-announce them.
That's what I
In
think.
today's world, this woman that I was interviewing today from her cabin started by saying, I have a black lab. There's wildlife outside. Okay, welcome to life. Kids, actually one of my favorite interview were doing an operations search about a year ago. And the father, in this case, was stopped by his 10-year-old through a Met Pro. And it was the most real moment in my life, I think. The father was horrified, and I said, no, this is life. This is work-life integration at its finest. Let's take a 10-minute break. He ended up getting the job, by the way. So for me, but it was the most real moment. But you know, it's called life. Hey, I've got a dog. The dog's gonna bark. The mail arrives in 15 minutes. The dog is gonna go nuts. Hey, thanks for that. It's just part of it.
Or they'll say, I have a certain kind of a dog as well, so it's kind of a connection.
Yeah. It's a nice way to do it. And I'll usually say, what kind of dog? And we'll have fun that way. If you have a cat, I hang up. No, that's not. Just, and it's sort of pre-announce.
Cats are easier to control, a dog can be a little louder, tougher to control.
Sometimes. Cat jumping on a
Well,
computer.
you can put them in another room and close the door, is what I'm saying, where a dog can go too far.
You really don't want to take me down this path.
Fair enough.
One more question, David.
Yes,
Sorry, not just a comment too is when we're doing these, it's not always Zoom. It could be you said earlier,
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams, email stuff,
Yeah.
to test your system.
Oh,
For the
great.
time,
Thank
it's
you.
like we used to show up for the interview at 15 minutes, 10 minutes before. Okay, good, look good, all that stuff. You got to make sure you've got this thing working because they're on there scrambling, it's not working, and they're waiting where you at.
Well,
That's
and it's interesting because I can tell you that one of my clients loves Teams. We're a Zoom platform. When I am on Teams, it pulls a different microphone when I'm in my office than Zoom does. And it's one of those things that I have to get on a couple minutes early just to see what it did. Excellent point, Tom. Thank you. Make sure that it does so. Same thing with video. My video is set to default on for Zoom, but it does not do so with anything else. Google Meets, etc. So it's just toggle it on. And then I learned, I did not know, there is a little screen cover on top of the computer that will actually block your camera. And I was showing up halfway, interestingly, for a synagogue service. And, you know, I always get on early to check, and my wife said, move the toggle switch, and I looked at her and said, oh my God. So she found it on her computer, so sure. Cool. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. For those of you that were live streaming, thank you for being there also.
David, thank you very
A
much.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Shake hands. My pleasure to be here. Thank you for including.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight here. It's great to have faces here. And like David said, there's nothing better than to be able to present to people and get a reaction. That's helpful. Just a couple of things in wrapping up. Check out our website for the next 8-week course that could be available if you're interested. I know Paul talked glowing about it, but it is really a helpful tool in the job search because you get the support of a team helping you in many ways, and all the practical things that we do in there can be very useful, even if you've been through several opportunities to have education. Remember the full day workshop in October. That's also available. Be signed up on there. Our next seminar is in North Heights Lutheran Church in Roseville, and it'll be on Thursday morning, the 16th, and it's Craig Ray talking about life-changing tips for job search networking from a top connector. And so that'll be very useful. So if you can't be there in person, which you know is a lot better for being here in front of us, but you can also join via our Zoom connection there. So something to think about. So excellent. And anything I missed, Harry?
You got it.
Okay, so let me close in a prayer, please. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together and having all these great speakers tonight to talk about what we need to do in our job searches and on Zoom and giving the first impression. Thank you for everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for the day that you provided, the glorious sunshine. Thank you, and help us to give us safe passage home. In Jesus' name we pray.